Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our town council meeting this evening. We have a full agenda this evening, so we will try to cover everything in a timely manner and as professional as possible. That being said, we're going to roll call. Kat Perry.
Here.
David Harwood.
Here.
Melissa.
Here.
Doug Matheson. Here. And Pete Greeny.
Here.
Okay, all are in attendance. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, council. Approval of minutes. April 9th, 2024, regular and closed sessions. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second? Pete, okay. Any discussion? All righty. Kat Perry, how do you vote?
Yes.
David Harwood.
Yes.
Melissa Pickett.
Aye.
Doug Matheson.
Aye.
And Pete Greeny.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Now, moving right along, we have the oath of office for Manager Shane Fox. So, Ms. Hillary, would you do the pleasure, please? And do we have Mrs. Fox? Ah, there we go.
Two Fox.
I, Shane Fox, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the State of North Carolina, and the town of Lone Rock, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of town manager, to which I have been entrusted, without fear or favor, so help me God.
Thank you, Fox family. Council, I hate to inform you, but those 30, 45-minute meetings are gone. Welcome back, Mr. Fox.
Good to be back.
Anything you would like to?
Not every day you get a second chance, right? So especially not in this profession. So I'm just appreciative of the town council and appreciative of the town staff and of the town folks themselves. Just welcome me back. It's been a good 2 weeks and transition's going smoothly, and I'm just appreciative to be back in this spot and look forward to the future.
We all thank you for considering to return. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Approval of the regular agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All righty. Ms. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Harwood.
Aye.
Ms. Pickett.
Aye.
Mr. Matheson.
Aye.
And Mr. Green.
Aye.
Okay, so regular agenda is adopted. Consent agenda. This is 2024/2025 audit contract, Main Street Project Ordinance, ARPA Project Ordinance, and Budget Amendment 2024-22. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
As we're all aware, there's no discussion allowed for consent normally, so we will go straight to a vote.
Aye.
Ms. Perry's aye. Mr.
Aye.
Harwood? Aye. Ms. Pickett?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Matheson? Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeny? Aye. All righty. Now, okay, ladies and gentlemen, on the public comment section of the agenda, we allow public comments to be made just on whatever you feel like concerns or good things that are happening in the town. We limit that to 3 minutes. Now, please keep in mind, since we do have a quasi-judicial hearing this evening, which is the SUP, you cannot speak on that particular project during the normal public comments. So if there's anything else that you would like to speak on other than that project, feel free to let Ms. Hubner know, and she will jot your name down. I think we have Mr. Starnes would like to speak on Hilltop Way.
He's here. Should I come up here so he can shoot at me?
Well, my hearing is failing, so it'd probably be a good idea, Mr.
All right,
Starnes.
just fine.
Yeah, just state your name and address for the record.
Jerry Starnes, 204 Hilltop Way, for a lifetime. First of all of us voters should thank you, council people, for your hours and days. You think it's days? I'm sure it is. And your service to the town. So, never start off with that. Is that statement flattery? Or will every decision you make be parsed by the 1,100 voters here? I think so, don't you? Can I give you a couple questions, and I'll make this as brief as I can. When you get to 3 minutes, tell me to get the hell out of here. Will a quaint Boone parking meter add any spaces to downtown Blowing Rock? Any parking spaces? Just a question. Hope you enjoy that. Did previous councils and the 2014 comprehensive plan discuss redevelopment of Park Avenue? That hadn't come up recently. Anyway, I wrote down here just a few questions, so let's do this. Between between Devant Field and Valley Boulevard, are there any financially challenged properties that the town could show an interest in and put it in your inventory? Whether you use it today or 10 years from now, you'd at least have it. And I'm doing the word financially challenged there. Between those two spots, Valley Boulevard and Devant Field, are there poorly utilized and derelict properties that you could acquire? And part of that question is, don't you wish the previous councils had given you a little inventory to work on for parking or whatever the purposes would be? That's kind of end of that section. And whether you use these things in the 2-year period or whether you trade them later for a piece of land that you'd rather have, I'm just encouraging you to be brave. 2 more questions and I'll sit down. In the 2024 comprehensive plan, and if you want to find that someday, go to page 44, item number 6. And I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit. Amend the building height standards to more adequately address mass, whatever mass is, scale, and elevation. So I don't think I'm in some other sacred spot. Have we started on that? I mean, that's going to come up every couple months. This is the one I really like. This. One more and then I'll move on. When we consider permits for new construction of restaurants or remodeling restaurants, How many parking spaces do you require they provide to get a permit to build that building? And this is the kind of the cute question I put on the end. Does that apply to outside tables too? And that does eat up some parking spaces. Okay, here's the end. Let's have a little fun. Let's start the Blowing Rock lottery, and we'll say it's worth $10 billion. And what day will the streets be backed out North and South Main, Sunset, and 221 here, so that you have to drive around in circles to find a space to park? That's it. Did I get finished in time?
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Points well taken.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? There are 3 minutes. Okay. We all thank those that do elect to speak. Thank you so much. That gives us insight. Sometimes we can miss certain situations, and that helps open our eyes. So thank you so much. Okay. Now, we're moving into this public hearing process. This is what we call an SUP. It is quasi-judicial. To speak on this particular project, you have to be able to speak of issues that might directly affect you, okay? You will have to be sworn in, and so just keep in mind, you do have to be, these type projects have to, in some way, shape, or form, affect you. So please, while you do speak, you'll need to address the council on how this might affect you or your property. So that being said, those that wish to speak need to step over here to Hillary and be sworn in. I think is Brian going to be speaking? Brian, you'll need to be sworn in. Yes, sir. Would you like to be sworn in?
On the list to speak.
Very good. Yes, sir. Get him sworn in. Okay, now, secondly, council, there's a few of you that are new. In an SUP, a quasi-judicial, you cannot speak of that project to anyone outside of the town employees planning or the town manager or the town attorney. If you have spoken to other people in detail to this project, I ask you to speak up, let the council know what was said, and as such, the council can determine whether you should be recused. So I'm leaving it up to you. If you haven't, great, fantastic. That being said, Mr. Harwood is recusing himself only because he has not spoken to anybody, but he has been involved in the project. Am I correct?
Well, that's a correction. I have a ongoing business, prior and ongoing business relationship with the applicant on multiple projects. So there is an existing business relationship. And so I'm asking to be permitted to recuse myself.
Very professional, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve his request?
So move.
Okay, Doug was first, Pete was second, and
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
okay. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Y'all jumped at that motion real quick.
All right, moving right along. Thank you for your patience. I guess we'll lead off with Brian Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, good evening. I'm gonna start by presenting the project we have before us tonight. Tonight we've got special use permit 2024-01 Arbor Village. Applicant is Mr. Josh Cash. Josh is with us tonight, and his engineer Jason Gaston with Valor Engineering. So to begin with, this is a multi-family project. Just to orient where we're located. Food Line Shopping Center, Samaritan's Purse. And this is the subject parcel here. It's between Valley Boulevard and Main Street. A vacant wooded lot as it exists today. Mr. Cash is requesting a special use permit for a multifamily project. It will contain 4 two-family buildings, considered townhomes. 8 total units is what he's wanting to propose. They will contain 3 bedrooms in each unit. The total site area is 1.367 acres and is zoned general business. The property is located within the WS4 watershed water supply. The property is a little closer area of the property. Property is proposing a right-in, right-out off of Valley Boulevard. 4 total buildings with 8 units, 2 each. This will be accessed off of Valley Boulevard. There's also proposed 8 parking spaces on Main Street as well. Proposed building heights for the project are, and I'll get to some elevations here in a moment, are 31 feet total, which is within the required building height limits. The project is proposing they're proposing 24 total parking spaces. Multifamily requires 2.5 spaces for each unit with 3 or more bedrooms plus 1 additional space for every 4 units in the development. The standard minimum parking for multifamily would total 21 parking spaces for the total project. The applicant is requesting, which is in a permitted use there, to be allowed to rent short-term rental. Short-term rentals do require 1 space per bedroom. So 24 total bedrooms would require 24 parking spaces. So they have adequate parking proposed for the project. The project will also be proposing a new sidewalk along Main Street. This is a requirement of the ordinance. This is already existing here along Valley Boulevard. Again, just to show you the layout of the buildings, they are really considered a townhouse style project, which means this is the property as a whole, and each individual unit will be on its own separate lot. This is the proposed clearing limits of the project. So there will be some tree safe areas here and along this property line on this side here. This is where the parking lot is below. Proposed grading plan. The applicant is proposing, because of the steepness of this area here, multiple retaining walls, and also there'll be a retaining wall on this end of the property as well, with some in between. Utilities will be pulled out the back of the units and connected to existing water and sewer along Main Street. This has been reviewed and no issues with any utilities there. Preliminary landscape plan, a final landscape plan will be submitted if this is approved to meet all the conditions of the ordinance and any other conditions that may be placed on it. This is the perspective from Valley Boulevard. 8 units. Excuse me, 4 buildings, 8 units. This will be your perspective from Main Street in front of Chatola looking up. And this vegetation has been placed strategically based on what's been proposed to be preserved on the site. Planning board recommendations. We heard the project at the April 18th planning board. Planning board recommended additional conditions for some more additional landscaping and screening. Along this property line here, and additional landscaping to help screen the retaining walls that's proposed there. Planning board encouraged the applicant to look at varying the distance and heights of the retaining walls, as long as the condition they thought was not to vary this bottom retaining wall to be no further towards Main Street. I think that was just to encourage the applicant and the designer, if there's any other options there, to improve the walls, to take a look at that. Third condition they recommended was encourage the applicant to replace arborvitae with a more native tree, evergreen shrub, which is no issues. I think the applicant has agreed not to have any issues with that. Ordinance does allow this, but one of the conditions was to have this be a gravel parking lot instead of paved parking lot. And I think the reason was to just leave it more of a natural state than have a paved parking area, because it's already gravel now, to try to make it blend in more. Fifth condition was no lighting on the walkway from the parking area to the back of the units. They're proposing the way to utilize this parking lot is to come out the bottom of the units with a path here. So the condition was less than it was absolutely necessary, or any codes required it, is to not light that for the benefit of the neighborhood. And the sixth condition was to allow the neighbors, which is on these properties here, to allow them to have input on the south landscape buffer along with this property line here. Any questions before I move on? And I'll explain. There's a couple requested waivers they're looking at. Any questions up to this point?
Doug?
Only question I have is, so far with the planning board's recommendations, how have they felt about it?
How the planning board felt?
Right, no,
How the applicants felt?
has the applicants felt about answering this?
I'll let them speak for themselves, but my understanding, they had no issues working with those recommendations.
Brian, where is the parking? Where is the parking? Period. I see it down by the road.
Eight spaces will be proposed here. And the access, I was just mentioning. The right in, right out here will go into the parking lot. So you've got parking in between. There's 2 parking spaces at the end here. And there's garages on the front of these buildings. So within the garage, those parking spaces count as a spot as well.
About fire department access to the backside of the building? Because you say that's gonna be a path. I mean, it may not be an issue, I don't know.
It was sent to the fire department. I had no
Okay.
no correspondence back,
Okay.
so. Yeah, if he Kent's here to ask questions if there's concern there.
Pete.
Brian, I'm going to reserve my questions till after I hear the applicant's presentation.
Me too.
Okay. So as part of this project, the applicant has requested 2 waivers. These are basically, it's a variance from the standard, deviation from the standards there. In the ordinance, number 1 is the applicant is requesting 8 units instead of 7. Ordinance limits based on the acreage of the property to 7 total units. The applicant is requesting an additional unit to 8 total units. The council has the ability to provide that deviation. There's a process, and we can go through that in a minute, that you need to weigh the questions that's in front of you to allow that deviation. The second one, section 1611.2 limits retaining walls to 12 foot in height total. So the retaining walls is proposed. Oh, been hitting the button. This first retaining wall is 12 feet, the second one is 12 feet, and the third one is 4 to 7 feet. So with that collectively being more than 30 feet, we think a requested deviation should be sought here. The original plan that they proposed had one 30-foot wall here, which was over obviously 12-foot maximum. So that's a deviation as well that they're requesting to allow the multiple walls collectively over that 12 foot there. That's all I have. Any questions, I'll be glad to go through them.
On those retaining walls, will they be landscaped in between terrace?
This is preliminary, but yes, I think the thought is to use evergreens. And there was quite a bit of discussion at the planning board about the softening those retaining walls with landscaping. And I think the applicants were fine with working with staff to come up with a plan to screen those. I think it's 8 foot between these walls as they're offset. So there's adequate room to provide pretty good landscaping in between them.
Thank you.
The retaining walls will have to comply with the ordinance in regards to a material that's suitable for the ordinance. Rock, cultured stone, something that's native there. It has to complement the buildings as well. And I think the applicant is open to suggestions and making that where it meets the ordinance. And obviously the walls will be engineered as well.
Brian, how much space is between each unit with 8 and also with 7? Do you have a schematic that shows with 7?
No, ma'am, there's
Okay.
not. The distance between these are 20 feet plus minus between the units. Parking space 9 foot wide.
Thank you.
Can they, and I may have missed this, could they match those walls up much with the stone top walls that we have on Valley Boulevard?
Stamped.
On the outside, as far as what's gonna be visible to look more like rock work?
Yes. And we've had discussions in the office. I mean, there's a lot of different options now, even with your segmental block, gravity top blocks. That's more of a rock look. One we've been discussing is the walls at the Embers, which looks more like a stacked rock, natural rock. But there's a lot of different options that they can explore. Whether it's a segmental wall or whether it's like a poured in place wall, I think that'll be to be determined. But I think both you can provide a suitable material for it, and they can explain and you can ask questions more on what their thoughts are. But I think we can get a decent looking stone look on the walls.
Could they have came down with their entrance and been close to straight across from Food Line?
DOT has reviewed this, and they recommended
That
centering the driveway. So he's going off some of the recommendations with them.
trying to get a red line.
Yeah, I think it's probably too far down for that. I think their big concern was the median that's existing there to prevent any kind of crossovers there. That's partly why, the town, we were in favor of the ride in, ride out to prevent that. Obviously you can't, but that was from DOT's recommendations. They have reviewed it and they're good with it.
Council, any other questions for Brian yet? All right. Thank you, Brian. Okay, as Mr. Cash. Gentlemen, thanks for coming.
Josh Cash, Cash Custom Homes. So I'm just, Jason will speak to a lot of the technical parts, but as far as the building and aesthetics and things, I'm here to just answer any questions you have.
I have a question about how someone leaves the back and walks down that path, but how, in the renderings, I didn't see a door in the crawl space.
And they're probably blocked, but from, this doesn't have a pointer on it, does it?
Yes.
It does.
Top button. Go back to the pictures.
Yeah, go back to the rendering. So we'll have an integrated stair that comes from this lower level, and the staircase will be inside so that we didn't have that exposed. And there'll be a door kind of out of that crawl space that would lead to the grade.
Okay, when you say integrated stair,
It's inside the building.
okay.
Staircase inside the building.
All right. And the path goes along sort of parallel, right? I'm trying to, if you could walk me through like how someone follows that to get to a car in the lot.
Yeah, so it would run, parallel to the back of the building, and then once you get to this point, it starts to drop down, pick up contour again, and then take it back to this secondary parking lot.
And did I understand Brian to say there would be no lights on that path?
Well, that was a recommendation of planning board.
That there be no lights on that path?
Yeah.
Is that because of disturbing the two houses at the end?
I think that was the intent.
What about the safety
You know,
issue?
I think that landscape lighting, there could be some things done that aren't street lights or anything that, you know, but I think a subtle lighting could be used. And then, you know, maybe in this area, with the amount of existing rhododendron and screening, I think, you know, even directionally, the landscape lighting could be placed where it's shining on the path but away from a residence.
All right, since the planning board, and maybe this is a logistical, procedural issue, since the planning board recommended no lights, are we supposed to be looking at it as that, or we could, Mayor? Y'all might want to answer this question. I don't know if it's a procedural question, but since planning board has put it to us with no lights on that path, we could change that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Planning is strictly there to make recommendations, what they feel council should look at and consider. Of course, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said no lighting. You know, low-level lighting, pathway lighting would not be obtrusive, I would imagine, like you would street lights. But you would have to have some kind of lighting on that walkway for safety issues, I would think.
I mean, I don't think the residents here, you know, would want an illuminated backyard either. You know, so I think, you know, there could be something landscape and kind of dark sky that wouldn't illuminate up or out, and it would just be directed at the path.
What material will the path be made of?
My thought was something like the carriage trails, or, you know, like a fine gravel screening, something that would pack well, that could be maintained.
And I watched the whole 2 hours of the planning board meeting, so I was pretty educated from that. But there were parts of that on YouTube that the audio was not clear to me. So I'm wondering about the stormwater drainage and impervious. I know you talked about it in that meeting, but could you talk about it again with us?
Yeah, and this is Jason's expertise, so I'll defer to him.
Hey there, I'm Jason Gasson with Valor Engineering, the resident nerd on the project. That's me. So as far as stormwater, so there is stormwater management. Majority of it is here. You can see the pipes underground there. And if you can see on the plans here, the intent was to bring even the gutter water forward, so that all the structures and the parking along Blowing Rock Boulevard would drain to the stormwater management facility. Now this will be oversized to compensate for the area that's not draining to it, which is below it. That's pretty common in stormwater design. You're always going to have bypass because you can't get every drop of water to go into the stormwater facility. So you have bypass areas, and to offset the flows that this is creating, you oversize this so that essentially you slow this water down to compensate for the uncontrolled water here. I say uncontrolled, there was some discussion in the planning board about, well, how we treat this. Well, the best way to treat it is to sheet flow it through an existing stream buffer, which is how it's designed. So it's promoting a sheet flow. There's no source of concentrated flow or any kind of pipe outlet that's going to concentrate in an area, which makes it more difficult to treat. So that's a general wrap on the stormwater.
And sheet flow is enabled through a decline, how do you get, so you're talking about those parking spaces are gonna be level. And
Almost
so
level.
how do you get sheet flow going where you want it to go?
So in general, if you look at the grades, which you can't see here, this parking lot sloped about 3 to 4% this direction as a whole. So imagine this right here will work just for me. This entire piece is the parking lot. This is flat. So as opposed to making a channel like this and concentrating at one point, we'll take the whole parking lot and dip it this way so that it all flows uniformly this way. That's how you promote sheet flow.
Okay, and then repeat, I know you just said, but you've got the sheet flow, and then where does it go?
Oh, sorry, wrong button. This area here.
Headwaters, you're talking
So it flows from kind of
the stream.
northeast to southwest. That direction.
Was there not any containment, Brian, required for this project?
Yes, there is. As I mentioned, it's right here underneath the front parking lot.
So it is underneath front parking lot?
He meets the ordinance requirements of what he has to contain.
Okay, okay.
That kind of softens the runoff in the back by having all that trail and that parking lot gravel.
Well, again, the intent of the whole project was to try to preserve as much existing vegetation along Main Street as possible. And there was some discussion in the planning commission meeting about what about actually developing or building a bioretention area, which would work. That's totally fine. We said that's not a problem. But again, we're trying to blow up natural area to replace it with something to treat it. It's always best to preserve natural vegetation in an effort to treat stormwater runoff. So that's what we did, and that's what we're promoting the sheet flow for those few spaces to go through.
You had mentioned that you all were amenable to working with the property owners on the other side. That would be the south side, on vegetation, plantings. Have you all had any discussions with those property owners to date?
I have not, but I think Josh may have, so I'll let him speak to that.
Okay. Well, that's between you guys. I mean, that's,
Well, yeah, so we have spoken, and it was less about screening, it was more about, reduction or elimination of the parking here.
okay.
So, that was their concern, was the parking. And I mean, paved parking does create a contrast to what's there now. So when the planning board mentioned having gravel, I thought that was a viable solution, viable compromise to have something that just kind of more naturally blends with the existing road. And then, the only other thing we discussed, beyond eliminating would be, if council allowed, maybe these spaces to be eliminated to, keep a little bit more of a buffer here, and then keep more of this area as a parking option. But, gravel as well to keep it where it blends with the natural.
Why did you all not choose to put the parking spaces closer to the buildings?
Well, I mean, any additional parking here would,
I'm saying below, behind the building.
behind,
Is it due to grade?
yeah, and to get them here would basically take all of this. I mean, it would be a mass grading. And so a lot of the rhododendron and a lot of this.
A lot of those are already gone.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of sick over that, because that's
I know.
something that we've tried to protect from day one. So to see all that cut was heartbreaking, but there's still, all of these natural trees, and then this area is really thick. So if we tried to push it back, it would be worse for them than what's presented, for sure. So those are the conversations. This is so heavily screened. My only concern with the planning board suggestion of more screening is that, to try to put something planted, you end up having to remove the rhododendron that's the best screening we've got. So I don't know, maybe in here, but most of this is really thick as it is.
Could you tell me what those 3 dotted lines are? What, that you keep pointing
Oh, right.
around? I mean, they go, I don't know.
Right here,
What is that?
that's the right of way. So that's the road that leads, through
To the homes
property
that are-
to the 2 homes that are,
So it is a road.
yeah.
It's an
right.
easement. It's an
It-
access
It's
easement.
an easement. Okay, so to get in and out of their homes, they have to go through that parking lot.
Correct.
And do we know if, we all want to have the buffer and the cover with, plants and bushes but if you plant more, do we know how that impacts drainage and erosion?
I'm gonna let Jason.
Can you repeat your question?
Yes, if you were talking about buffering, having more vegetation that would be a buffer or cover the unsightliness of the back of it, how would planting more affect the drainage of that property and maybe even erosion?
Well, vegetation is, any kind of canopy is always a positive when it comes to drainage because it prevents raindrops from hitting bare ground and causing an explosion that you've probably seen the slow footage of. So any kind of vegetation is always a positive. The more vegetation, the better. That's why we tried to preserve as much as we could between the backs of the buildings and Main Street. So vegetation is always a positive when it comes to drainage. The only somewhat difficulty there is, on super steep terrain, or if we're, again, blowing up good vegetation to put in more purpose vegetation, that's where it can get a little bit iffy because we already have an existing root bed and existing canopy. Is it really adding benefit by putting in things there? But that's, again, as long as we're putting vegetation in, I'll always vote for that. That's always my desire. Definitely don't remove it completely, but if we're gonna put anything in, that's always good.
Thank you.
Brian, I have a question. And excuse my ignorance, but we have a building height maximum of 34 feet, correct? 35, okay. 35 feet, so we're 35, they're within ordinance on the front side.
Correct. There are 31 feet, which is measured from
the threshold or whatever, yeah, okay? They're 30, right, 31 feet. Now, that being said, they also have an entrance off of Main Street, which is now 60-some feet?
Correct.
Okay.
No, I'll let Josh, I'm thinking you're probably in the 40 to 50 foot range on the rear elevations.
Okay. But our ordinance allows from my experience, a building height from the main entrance, correct?
Correct.
What's the main entrance?
The main primary entrance will be here on Main Street
Okay,
at the finished grade.
okay.
So there was.
Just want to make that
they're
clear.
within, yeah.
Thank you. Pete?
Just a couple of questions. For the record, I did attend the planning board session, and I would like to say that the planning board members that did speak were very thorough, very conscientious about all the things that they felt were important. And so a couple comments that I had, and Charlie, you asked the question about the screening for the neighbor. And I think that was, listening to the neighbor he was pretty emphatic about having some protection, so I hope that that's going to be built into it. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, go ahead.
The vegetation, I mean, I don't know. The vegetation here is pretty substantial now. And I mean, the whole goal is to keep, I think the limits of disturbance probably pulls into this area here. So we'll assess it, and, you know, staff is glad to reach out to the neighbors there. But I think what we've got is a pretty substantial existing buffer there.
Okay. Second, on the waiver requesting 8 units opposed to 7, if you didn't get that waiver, how does that affect your economic model?
I've thought about that. What it would likely do is make one, that last building would just be 1 unit. So you take a dividing wall, wouldn't change the size of the unit, wouldn't change the footprint, you just take away a dividing wall. Makes a more expensive unit. Being from here, and I was trying, there's a price point in my head, we were trying to keep it under. So that would obviously push that into a pretty expensive unit. And that was the reason. All it would take is, to technically meet the ordinance, this line right here goes away, and this just becomes 1 unit set 2. But it doesn't change the footprint size, nothing else really changes.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, so these units, considering they are short-term rental and they're for revenue, they're revenue-driven. One, I know they don't have to follow the same guidelines as a hotel motel. Does that also mean they don't have to be sprinkled?
From the building code being a 1 and 2 family, no.
Okay. Okay. Council, would you all like to hear from Mr. Berry?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Berry, come on up. If you would, just state your name and your address for the record. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank y'all for having me. My name is Fred Berry. I live on 654 Troublesome Road in Reedsville, North Carolina. I'm married into the family that's at the end of the driveway, and I'm their spokesman. And right here, these 4 people here are the grandchildren of Fred Hartley, who moved with his wife Stella Irene up from Ajo in 1923, built that, improved that house, raised 6 children, and we're and still are significant members of the Blowing Rock community. Some of them stayed, some of them moved away, and so, but historically, maybe y'all know, maybe you don't. One of Fred and Stella's sons was Vaughn, and Vaughn married Helen, and Helen Hartley, a long time ago, was a member of this body. Helen Hartley Realty was Helen was quite somebody in the community.
Would you state the address for the record of the property there?
423 Main Street.
Thank you.
Is what it is. Also here is Butch Kearns, who there are 2 houses down there. We've got one, and Butch and his wife have the other one. And I'm speaking here on behalf of Butch too, I hope. So a few things that I want to talk about and raise concerns at. One, there is, the ask here is a significant deviation from the retaining wall rule. In other words, there's going to be, as I understand it, instead of 12 feet of retaining wall, 30 feet of retaining wall. And that is going to dynamically change the view of Main Street. There's going to be this, and it's, the mayor pointed out, it's legal, but in essence, it's going to be a towering event over your town for people that come in. And that's going to be the landmark event for people coming in Main Street. That's y'all's call. If you want that in the name of increasing the financial revenue of absent landowners who are going to buy these things. And so I think that's a judgment call that's on y'all. They've asked for the variance on the retaining wall and also the variance to build an extra unit. And once they build that extra unit, they need the parking place down at the end of our driveway. And if that unit was not built, then they wouldn't need the parking lot. And so our ask is that if you think it's good for the town to have this towering event coming into you for revenue purposes or development purposes, that's on y'all. As somebody that comes up here, I'm not visioning it as a positive, visceral experience coming into town. But please don't allow the variance to add that 8th unit, because that 8th unit puts the parking lot right there at the end of our driveway. And the reasons not to have the parking lot, one, you're already facing a parking crisis here. There's no question. And so folks are gonna, if it looks like a parking lot, boom, people are gonna come in and park. And so what we're gonna be facing is a bunch of people that we don't know parking there. As a practical matter, there are already 2 parking places for every unit upstairs, so to speak. I don't imagine hardly anybody's that is connected with those buildings. One, how often are 3 cars going to come there? 2, are they going to want to park and walk up that walkway, up that hill? That's a really steep hill. And so that parking lot is going to be a magnet for other people that we're going to face. I guess there'll be some signage there that will say this is the parking lot for the arbor. And so now what we'll be faced with is looking like to have to go through a parking lot for an apartment complex to get to our place. It presents, I'll offer to you, problems with emergency services, traffic jams, and that type of thing. So that's basically our pitch. Is it your duty as the city fathers here to maximize the return of the investment of people that want to build? I brought you some reading material that I'll pass out if I could. And what this is an article that just I read this on my news feed, and it struck me, and it came to me in the back of my mind as I was thinking about speaking today. And it is how some cities are getting away from mandatory parking space requirements for their apartment complexes. And the reason is that the more parking places you have, the more cars you're gonna get, the more congestion you're gonna get, the less public transportation you're gonna get, and the higher cost of the buildings. And so, you know, no matter what happens here, this is not for local. No working person can ever afford these things. So whether or not you have 7 units or 8 units, it may affect the marketability of them. I get that, but it's never going to help working folks get a place to live in Blowing Rock. However, I would just commend this to you as something to think about in what you do. So in sum, if you're gonna bend the rules to let them have the 8-foot, the extra retaining wall, please don't bend the rules to let them have that 8th unit. And if you bend the rules to let them have both, please bend the rules a little bit and let them slide on the parking lot, because it's not going to be used and it's going to affect the quality of our experience up here in our life. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Yes, Pete.
Mr. Berry, were you satisfied with the answer that you got on the screening? Because I know you talked a lot about it at the planning board, and so
I'm satisfied that the builders don't want to build the parking lot, but they're not evil people and will work with us, and that they will. Does that mean we're satisfied that the parking lot should go in there? No, sir, we're not.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time and visiting again. We hope to see you again soon. Brian, got a question. The current parking ordinance is our ordinance, correct? Okay. So if the council so wants to deviate from that and say that they don't have to have the parking at the end of the driveway, they can so do that, correct?
You do have that ability, yes.
Just food for thought, council. That parking area can be pulled and as an option, and you can approve that, and that would be no parking at the end of the street. Thoughts?
I think just to make sure that we're uniform on other projects. You know, short-term rentals, I guess in a nutshell, the multifamily is a less requirement for parking. Short-term rentals based on the bedrooms.
What is multifamily?
Multifamily is 2.5 spaces for a unit with 3 or more bedrooms. Plus, you have to have an additional space for every 4 units. So that kicked them into an extra unit or so with multifamily. But multifamily was just 21 total. Now we do see short-term rental not utilizing all their parking sometimes, especially with more bedrooms. More bedrooms, you just don't see as much parking there.
Brian, if they went to 7 units and did short-term rentals, does that bring them down to a number that eliminates the parking at the bottom?
It would not. It would get them to 21 parking spaces.
So they would still need the parking at the bottom?
And they would, if they made that 7th unit, 1 unit, they may make it 4 or 5 bedrooms, which the number of bedrooms is what counts for the parking spaces, correct?
We would require 1 space for each bedroom there.
So eliminating that one wouldn't help much.
But you've got the flexibility to eliminate some of the parking. Your wish.
Keep in mind, this is case by case. You all make the decisions accordingly on whatever a given project is. So if you say cut out half the parking down at the bottom, that's your call. You say cut out all the parking at the bottom, that's your call.
Now, eliminating just this side here would eliminate quite a bit of disturbance on that one side. If you've been down there now, this side's pretty much flat and it wouldn't take any lot of disturbance to establish that. There's 4 on each side.
Could you clarify for me? I'm a bit confused. If it were 7 units, that 7th unit is going to be larger than the other units, not the footprint, but I mean the inside. Do you know what I'm asking? Did I hear that right?
It depends on the way they would design it. It could be a smaller footprint, it could be a larger footprint, but it would still just be based on one unit. A unit don't really dictate how many bedrooms is in there. It's per unit, so that could vary depending
It would
on.
not be a duplex.
So define a unit.
This is one unit right here.
Mm-hmm.
One dwelling unit. The reason we call this 2 families is because one structure, you've got
Right.
family on each
Right.
side, 2 family.
But if you've got 7 units, that 7th one is going to be larger in square footage than the others. Inside, livable, heated, whatever you call it, square footage. Is that right?
It depends on the way they design it. It can be smaller, it could be larger.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see the need why that would have to be a whole footprint there
Okay.
for one unit. But they could add more bedrooms, like Doug was mentioning, they could put more bedrooms, which would put more burden to the parking there.
I'd like to ask Mr. Berry a question.
Mr. Berry?
If, say, half the parking lot was gone, would you feel any better about it?
Sure, we're gonna feel better, you bet. We feel really good.
Right, right.
Yes, sir. No question, but, having half of it it's half the problem instead of the whole problem. I still think as a practical matter, they're gonna be so little used as to be more of a negative because, the parking lot at the rock shop, it's like they're always watching out. It's like I don't think they have a guard. They have the parking protection is a big deal around here. I get this.
Counsel?
So on the multifamily with 7 units, it would actually round it down. So you'd only be required 19 spaces.
19.
19.
So there's still not 19 spots up top
You'd be looking at 3
that you would
at
need
the
at the
bottom.
bottom.
But you could, food for thought, you could have 1 unit at the end, you could add a garage to it. You could possibly pick some parking up there. Now, would that change the footprint? That would be the question in design. Would it reduce the retaining walls? Maybe, maybe not.
Well, if you go from 8 units to 7 units, it's really not going to reduce any retaining walls because they can still build the same structure with 50 bedrooms in it. So, I mean.
So I think the advantage of 7 units is you would reduce down to about 3 parks on the lower part.
Counsel? Do we have questions for Brian, Mr. Berry, for Mr. Cash?
I make a motion when we close the public hearing.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion on the closure? Okay. Jack? You in favor of closing the public hearing?
Yes.
Melissa? Doug?
Aye.
All right, Pete.
Aye.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll throw something out there. Just to see what comes back.
Number one, we need to address the deviations. So number one would be the units. If you look at your packet page 4, flexibility in applying the standards contained, you can vote on A, B, C, D, E as a whole to approve or disapprove that deviation. So you need to weigh and consider.
Each one of those needs to be mentioned in your motion. So,
I'm having technical difficulties.
that's okay. What page was that?
What page?
40,
Page 4.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, you got a packet page.
yeah, we got that.
Yeah.
The requested waivers.
So,
So it's got the planning board recommendations at the top. It's about the 4th page in the staff report.
34.
it's page 34.
34.
34.
Good, he's back.
35 is your finding of facts.
34.
Oh,
Right.
sorry, it's those.
Do it. Okay, you may want to help me word this the way that I want to try and get it out. But like I said, I'll throw something out, see what comes back.
Throw it out, Doug.
That we grant the 8 units recommendations of the planning board waiving the retaining wall. And
So you want to,
I would like to do away with the parking down at the bottom
so
completely.
your motion is to accept the requested waivers that they had addressed with the planning department. Allow the 8th unit and thus, but have the parking on Main Street removed from the application, correct? Okay. We have a second on that motion? Do we have a third?
I'll second.
Melissa has seconded Doug's motion. Any additional discussion? Okay, Kat?
Before we vote on it, let's make sure
And I'll ask
that we're good here.
yeah, do you feel like we've done enough here with stating in the motion to receive and the requested waivers, number 1 and 2, 1612-2, 1611.2.1, along with eliminating the additional parking spaces?
Yes, I do think there needs to be at least some reference to required findings for those waivers.
Right.
So that can be incorporated by reference to A through E as in the packet.
Right.
But I think that needs to be identified at least.
I feel like the applicant has met A through E with this And with the motion that we've made.
Yeah, and numbers 1 and 2 there for the second waiver dealing with the.
Okay, Hillary, add that to the original motion. Are you in agreement with that, Ms. Pickett?
So one additional comment.
Yes.
The applicant just wants to make sure short-term rental is an allowed use, that won't affect their ability to short-term rental in the future.
It will not affect.
three-bedroom
its- No,
It won't affect everything that he's applied for.
that's correct.
Other than what we just stipulated with what the planning board has.
And we'll incorporate that into the special use permit.
And let me ask our council, is there any state ordinance that we need to be aware of before we pull the parking spaces?
No, not to my knowledge. The state ordinances are enabling legislation that allows for the SUP process, which is guided by your regulations. So provided that it's allowable under your regulations, there's no preemption at the state level that I'm aware of.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion? Okay. Ms. Barry?
No.
Okay. Ms. Pickett?
Aye.
Mr. Matheson?
Right.
No.
The mayor votes yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming this evening for this project. All right, moving right along. Okay, Mr. Shane Fox, I tell you what, we will take a 10-minute recess, let some people get out.
You need a break there.
All right, Shane Fox, the board member vacancies for PLARB.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a request of the council to advertise for a vacant position for our formerly known as BRAC Board. I have it here in front of me to make sure I get it right. The Public Land Appearance and Recreation Board, formerly known as BRAC, is a request for us to be allowed, Ms. Hubner, to be allowed to advertise for a vacant position. We had a vacancy with a member in the past month, and so we're asking for permission to move forward with advertising for that vacancy.
So council, we need a motion to approve the advertising for this position. So do I have a motion?
So I'll second it.
Okay. Melissa first. Cat Perry second. Need a discussion on this? Okay. Cat.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Melissa.
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
Pete.
Aye.
Okay. There you go. Okay. And now official reports and comments. Want to welcome Shane Fox back. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for considering us and deciding to come back to Blowing Rock. I think DOT did a great job, the best they could on 321 cleaning after the slide. Our thanks go out to DOT for doing a great job. Thank you so much, and their contractors. Water and sewer on Main Street, looking, oh gosh, that's really moving along great. It's good to see they got some paving done today. I think that Shane and I talked, and we were going to change the signing at North Main and South Main and 221 that said only four-wheel drives allowed, but we decided against that. And on a sad note, Celeste Phillips, Dan Phillips' wife, passed away the other day. Celeste was really well-known in the community, did a lot for the community, had a real strong business in the community. And so our hearts and prayers go out to the Phillips family. For those that, there will be a memorial service on June 2nd at 4 o'clock at Blowing Rock Country Club. And it's open to all of her friends. And so, all right. So.
Yes. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you.
I ditto that remark from Charlie. I do want to give kudos to the DOT and to Iron Mountain. I know it seems like it's just never going to end, the water and sewer on Main Street, but all in all, it seems like they've made very good progress and have been efficient and considered the traffic and the residents, and so there's only so much they can do when they're disrupting, but it's needed, it's necessary, and I just want to say that I appreciate their work.
Mr. Arlen.
Welcome back. And once again, I want to thank Mr. Rothrock for keeping us in our lane in the interim. Really appreciate that, and appreciate you stepping up. Much appreciated, and all the staff that did that as well.
Ms. Pickett.
I can't say anything anybody hadn't already said, so I'm good.
Okay. Doug.
A couple things, I'll echo what David said. Kevin, thanks, you know, keeping us there. Melissa, Kat, and I attended the conference, and I think we all three came away with some very educational thoughts. They had some great mini classes, and we tried to divide up and attend a different one where we both didn't all three go to the same one. So, we look forward to it.
Pete?
A couple things. Shane, welcome back. Kevin, thanks for hanging in there, keeping us straight. Economic Development Commission, I got reelected as chairman, so I'll be there doing that stuff with the county for a while. Maybe with blessing. One interesting thing, we had Carolina West come talk to us about cell service for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I can sum up in about 30 seconds what we learned or didn't learn, and that was, stay tuned, not much is gonna happen. Although I did mention it to Shane, and Shane, would you comment on what we talked about in your discussion with AT&T?
Yeah, I think, AT&T is, in charge of the FirstNet program that's been out now for a number of years. And part of that is for them to expand their network countrywide. So by 2030, they've been charged with having a full network across the country. So AT&T is actively looking to expand in all areas. And so that's something that they're doing in this area and other areas as well, utilizing utility poles or utilizing existing right-of-way type of poles is something they're looking at, but also looking at expanding in other areas. And so I think we'll hear a lot more as we go into the summer months and the fall with them expanding in this area. My experience with them in Alexander is they're kind of coming this way with looking to expand.
Just one other point, thanks to Nathan for putting that pedestrian sign down there on Sunset. It does help a little bit. I was disappointed that when you did the striping that it wasn't yellow. I think it should have been yellow to call attention to people driving, and we still need to have the flashing lights. And I don't know where that is on the solar pack.
Short answer, they're there, they're just dim. So we're gonna have to look at replacing those with something different, maybe a completely different sign. If the lights are on, believe it or not, you just can't see them because they're dim. And so we're gonna have to potentially look at something different altogether and what that looks like.
Well, I think it's really important for the safety of our children and their satisfaction of the parents to know that we're gonna move forward in doing that. So, thank you.
Council? Mr. Fox?
I'm gonna come up here because it's been a while. I've got a lot to go over.
Let me start this timer.
I'll keep it relatively short, but I'll start by saying, I said this earlier, thank you for obviously allowing me to come back and giving me a second chance. I'll say thank you to the staff for allowing me to come back. The transition has been smooth. It's as if I've never left. So the last week and a half has been very appreciative of staff and their work towards the transition. Like it was said earlier, I'm in debt to Kevin Rothrock for the work that he's put in the past 11 months and able to continue all the great things we've got going on. So it's easy for me to come back and just pick back up because things have been running so smoothly. So thank you to staff and thank you to the council for allowing me to come back. I have here as well, thank you to DOT because they did a Herculean effort to get the road back open in the time that it took to be able to get the road back open. And thank you to everyone obviously in town for being understanding and cooperative during that time as well. A few updates on some projects. Main Street was mentioned earlier. We have changed gears in the past week a little bit to focus more on the road. We're kind of in the rainy season, so to speak, with storms. The binder that was being put down was sufficient until it started raining more often and traffic obviously causing issues there. So we do have a new focus, and we've been seeing that in the last couple of days of putting that asphalt binder down. They were even able today to get about 600 feet or so, 700 feet of asphalt binder down even in this weather. So optimistic as the next couple of days go on, that part's going to be complete. Then they're going to shift back to finish the main water line project. Right now they're down around Hill Street. They've got about 1,200 or 1,300 feet left to connect down to Chatola. That work should be done over the next few weeks. Sewer line work was completed yesterday. So the main sewer line and the sewer line work for this project is now essentially complete. So that was completed here with the setting of the manhole at Maple Street. And so we're very happy and grateful for Mr. Presswood and his group for being able to get that project finished. And so our next step again is getting that main line on the water side completed, and that's about 1,200 or 1,300 feet, like I said earlier. Then we'll have the tie-ins. So we'll see the tie-ins happening in June and July, and then hopefully punch list items in August. So we're a few months away, 3 or 4 months away from this project being at its conclusion. It is on schedule and it's on budget this time, so we're very happy and very pleased and gracious and showing our gratitude towards Iron Mountain for the work that they've put into this. USDA and USDA loan process has been talked about. You'll hear about that in the next couple of weeks. More than likely, we'll have that on the agenda for the June meeting for your review and potential approval. If you remember, the USDA loan is something we've talked about now for a number of years. It actually started with the Main Street project, and we were planning on going through the USDA. Again, if you recall, that allows us to expand out to a 40-year cycle, which allows us to kind of smooth out the debt payments on water and sewer projects. So when Main Street funding came in, thanks to the General Assembly, and we were able to obtain the $4.8 million for that, we switched gears over to the water plant and the wastewater plant and our Mayview lift station. So again, we're talking about $4.5 million, give or take. USDA is in the underwriting process now. Within the next week or so, we should have a final offer letter. We'll present that offer letter to you all at the June meeting. And again, we're expecting that to be in that $4.5 or so million range with interest rates somewhere in the mid threes, and that's a 40-year term. So that's our expectations right now. As that offer letter comes in, I'll share that with you all in anticipation of having that reviewed at the June meeting. But again, that is for significant water plant upgrades. A lot of the original 1979 piping and infrastructure's there. That's replacing the majority of that. Wastewater plant built in the mid-'80s, same thing. And then, of course, you've heard about our Mayview lift station, built a long time ago. It's a complete replacement of that Mayview lift station that does allow for us to be able to move forward with potential expansion at some point with sewer in that area. We're able to accomplish and sign our tank maintenance contracts this past week. So that's something that was voted on a couple months ago. We're looking for that work to start this summer into the fall, weather permitting. That includes not only the inspection and cleaning of the tanks, but ultimately the resurfacing of our clear well here at the water plant. And so you'll see that work starting later this summer, but those contracts have been signed. Memorial Park is up here, yet to be determined. There's more discussions, obviously, in our next steps and what that looks like. I have asked McGill and Associates and Doug Chapman, who's here, to go back to the bidder and receive a more segmented approach, if that's possible, towards the bid, so we can have more information. Right now, we're planning on having that for the summer retreat, if not sooner, for us to have some discussions of what that looks like. That is the update for now for the projects. Any questions or comments on the projects? Just a quick few updates here. Our TDA numbers were in for March. I shared that with you all. Our finance director is here as well, and she can share any updates, Ms. Brown, if you have any questions on our TDA numbers. TDA for March were up almost 16% over last March, 88,000 versus 77,000. Again, March is our lowest month. And so the past year, we've had 8 months in a row consecutively, a month, year over year improvements in revenue on the TDA side. So overall, year to date, we're up 8.7% on our TDA, on pace for about $1,850,000, which would be a record year for the TDA in revenue. ABC Store, always like giving updates to that. They had their quarterly meeting last week. I was able to attend a lot of budget discussions. They're anticipating the ABC Store to come in at around $3 million in sales for the year. March sales were up from 197 last year to 207, so $10,000 up this past March. And again, looking at approximately a $3 million annual revenue for the ABC Store. Our pool was uncovered and is ready to go for next weekend. So our Robbins Pool will open up Memorial Day weekend, as it always does. And this year, our inspection process went really smooth. So I'd like to thank the Park and Rec staff for putting in all the work and getting the pool ready. So weather cooperative, perhaps we'll have the pool open next weekend, and that'll go through Labor Day. Budget workshop is coming up next Tuesday. So that is here in this room from 1 to 5 on the 21st. Next town council meeting will also be when we do our public hearing for the budget, more than likely. That's to be held on June the 11th. Again, that's another Tuesday. That's obviously in here at 6 o'clock, as it always is. So as long as the budget workshop next Tuesday goes well and we have plenty of time between the workshop and the June 11th meeting, our plan is to come back on the 11th and provide the public hearing and potential adoption of the budget that night. If not, we could potentially have a special meeting, or we do have our summer retreat that's scheduled right now for Tuesday, June the 25th from 1 to 5 p.m. So we've got several options there to not only talk about the budget and hold our typical budget workshop, which is open to the public. It's not for public participation, but it is open to the public to allow for the public to come and observe your conversations in a very informal setting. But it does give us another opportunity there if we don't have the adoption at the June 11th to do it potentially on the 25th. And again, that's from 1 to 5, and we are going to hold that in this room for the summer retreat. Any questions on any of the updates so far? And I've got just a couple things I'd like to add at the end if I could. One, it was mentioned, and I was going to mention Mr. Dorini's seat as the chair in EDC, but I'd also like to mention, because I don't think that he will, Mr. Matheson has been named chair of the High Country Council of Governments. And so he has now taken on another role as chair of the High Country Council of Governments, which is a very important organization. Obviously, I was a director there for a period of time, and very glad that you've taken on that role and look to lead that board for the next year. So, or 2 years. 2 years, sorry, 2 years. So, and then I'd like to also mention that the Blowing Rock Elementary School now has just announced as of yesterday a new principal. So Mr. Patrick Succo, who's been there approximately 20 years, has decided to retire and will retire at the end of this school year. And Madison Holler, who is the current assistant principal at Hardin Park, will be taking on that role. So she was announced and approved last night by the school board. And I know she was here today meeting with staff after school. She, I think, will be a great addition to the town and understands the importance of the school and the town's partnership and our relationship. And we have spoken. And so I have invited her to a town council meeting later this summer. And I think that'll be something that she will look forward to attending and have a chance to kind of share maybe her vision with Blowing Rock School. Again, we're unique, not only to have a school here in town, which is unusual for anywhere anymore, but definitely for Watauga County. And we have a very special partnership and relationship with the school, so we're excited to be working with Ms. Holler. That concludes my updates for the night, unless you have any questions.
Good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our regular agenda. We will be going into closed session. No decisions will be made in this session.
North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3.
Thank you so much for coming this evening.